Hi, welcome back to the BMW i3 DIY channel. Today I wanted to go over something called a PMI, which is a simple decision analysis tool that allows you to look at pros and cons and interesting ideas, pluses, minuses, interesting ideas that you would look at to analyze and make decisions. So let's get this show on the road. This is the PMI for the BMW i3. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly because there's quite a few line items, and we want to make sure we highlight most of the PMI in a relatively quick time period. So to start with, the first line item was about the CFRP, or carbon fiber life module. Turns out it only weighs 172 pounds, which is a huge positive, and hands off to the BMW team for putting that together at that kind of a weight savings. The negative, of course, is the cost of carbon fiber for the vehicle. It adds almost $3,000 to $4,000 extra cost. The other minus was that the insurance companies, turns out they didn't like the cost of the carbon fiber repair because there wasn't very many places that could repair carbon fiber, and the repair cost is more than steel, more than aluminum, and they end up just going and totaling vehicles instead of paying the high repair cost. Another positive for the i3 was it was one of the first early entry vehicles space that was designed specifically to be an electric vehicle, and a lot of cutting edge engineering ideas and designs went into the vehicle. The media saw it as a compliance car, but it really was not a compliance car. It had a lot of innovative features that were almost a test bed and almost a prototype car that ended up going into production. It also had a very futuristic design because they started with a clean sheet and looking at it from what a electric vehicle could be versus just copying existing designs and putting electric motors into them. The negative was that the car, because it was so, quote, futuristic looking, that it turned out to be deemed as quirky looking as well, because it didn't really align with the cars of the day. Also, because it was such an innovative new design, there were a lot of small bugs that had to be worked out in the early production models, such as motor mount failures, fuel sensor failures, some other things. Interestingly enough, people either really liked the design or they really hated the design. It turned out to be really polarizing in its response to people interested in electric vehicles. One of the really interesting things about this car was that the design of the interior was really innovative and future looking, and even today, which is 10 years plus since the design of the interior, still looks quite modern and really is almost breathtaking with the design, how it looks. It's like a more of a furniture piece than an automobile. The negatives were that because the designers were trying to save as much weight as possible, driving towards an efficient design, they left a lot of things out, like electric seat adjusting, lumbar support, and this was determined to not really appeal to the luxury car buyers that they were designing the car for. Another really innovative design approach to this vehicle was the use of plastic body panels that are flexible on the outside. So since this was designed to be an urban vehicle, it would resist any kinds of dents that would occur from doors and whatnot in an urban environment. The minus is that in order to be able to have the paint adhere to these plastic panels, the paint tends to be somewhat soft and it can be easily scratched and damaged, so it'd have to be repaired. The i3 was designed for very good visibility, so you end up sitting in the car almost like a SUV, where it's somewhat upright and it has large window glass area. You can see really well. The negative to that has been that the drag coefficient for the vehicle is not best in class. It is a 0.29 drag coefficient. A Tesla Model 3 is a 0.23. And Aptera, which may end up being a production vehicle, is cleared out at 0.13, which is way down there, almost with experimental prototype vehicles. The net result of this is that the BMW has really great efficiency and great visibility for urban driving, but it does not do very well in high-speed highway-like conditions, and it definitely hurts the efficiency. That being said, the efficiency of the i3 was rated by the EPA at around 3.9, and the BMW said it should have been about 4.7 in their initial release. And my experience is I get it between 5 and 6, so I tend to think that the EPA was way conservative on their measurements. Funny, but that is also about where the current lithium phosphate Model 3 standard range is running at with a 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So the efficiency of the Model 3 is really not any better than the efficiency of the i3. Again, one of the positives of the i3 is it was really designed for high efficiency, lightweight, and it was definitely one of the most efficient lightweight EVs on the road, and especially with the first generation EVs. With the only exception would be Tesla with its really high performance versus the other EVs at the time. The minus, because of the design of the car, wasn't as stable at highway speeds compared to some other models, and due to having problems with the motor mounts, even the acceleration of the car was not optimal, and it was actually detuned to keep from damaging some motor mounts. That's unfortunate because the Mini Cooper EV that's currently being produced by BMW uses most of the same components of the drivetrain that the i3 has, and it can run at sub 6 seconds, even though it's a much heavier vehicle. So it would suggest that optimization of the i3 could have produced a sub 0 to 60 mile per hour, sub 6 second speeds or times, although that never occurred. Another interesting aspect of the i3 is that it went with a very large diameter, very narrow wheel design and tires for efficiency, and that led to problems with tire wear over time. A lot of owners complained that the tire life was severely limited compared to what they had been used to with a regular car. The other negative was that the media would call these bicycle tires, and I can kind of see why from looking at them. So it had a negative connotation in the press. Another very interesting aspect of the vehicle is the use of coach doors, which made entry and exit from the vehicle with both doors open really great. There's no B-pillar, which is the big pillar that goes between the front and passenger doors on normal cars. Unfortunately, it also had some problems in actual practice. If a driver went into a narrow parking spot and opened both doors, you could very easily get pinned where you weren't able to exit the vehicles. You'd be stuck between the front and rear door. Also, it turns out that if you have passengers in the back, such as school kids that you want to drop off, you basically have to get out of the car from the front seat and open the rear door. That the passengers in the back can't get out without the front door and passenger exiting first, at least not easily. From a media standpoint, the perception of the doors, they were called suicide doors, and that again led to a kind of a negative connotation of the vehicle. Another positive for the i3 is that it has a rear engine design, which gives two advantages. One, the weight distribution of the vehicle is really good between the front and rear axles, and the other benefit is that it's perceived to be beneficial to drive the rear wheels of a vehicle and steer with the front wheels versus having the front wheels both steer and drive the vehicle forward. The negative, of course, is that the space in the rear trunk was quite small, especially with the rear seats folded up. If the rear seats were folded down, however, the design of the car, being a hatchback design, allowed for quite a large space considering the small size of the vehicle. Another interesting positive, because this was such an advanced designed car, the engineers that built the car decided to go with refrigerant cooling instead of using liquid cooling or not using any cooling at all, such as the Leaf design had. Unfortunately, even though it was a great lightweight advanced system, it adds a lot of complexity to the AC system itself with additional piping and valving. It also requires a special non-conductive refrigerant that can be problematic if you take it to a mechanic that doesn't know that that is required. So the i3 was designed specifically for an urban environment with a short traveling distances, and because of that, you really don't require a large heavy battery, and you can take that to your advantage to improve the efficiency without having to carry around the weight of a gigantic battery if you're not going to actually utilize it. Customers' experience, though, was that they would have range anxiety, even though the battery size was enough for really more than 2 times the average, at least US daily commute of around 30 miles. So they did have a REX or range extender model available that would take care of those 5% journeys or emergency situations. But unfortunately, this sounds like one of those fortunate, unfortunate stories. California limited the usability and range of the REX in order to qualify for some of the rebates on the vehicles. So that severely limited the usability of the REX compared to other markets. I think as Europe was one of them that wasn't the case. Eventually, BMW, they increased the battery size from 60 to 90 to 120 amp hour batteries. And that alleviated a lot of the range anxiety and also alleviated a lot of the need for a REX model. This builds on the last slide a bit, but basically having the design that had a range extender option says that you don't need to have expensive large batteries that are heavy, require a lot of materials, a lot of lithium, a lot of cobalt in order to have a long range, especially when the range, even with a small battery, was more than 2 times the average commute that a person would have if the battery is charged on a daily or every other day basis. Unfortunately, if you added a REX, you have all of the problems with maintenance, all the problems with having to put gas in it. It kind of negates the perception of it being an eco-friendly vehicle. So it has some negative connotations from a marketing standpoint. What's interesting, I'll threw this information in as well, that the 60 amp hour REX plus a REX weighed about 2,900 pounds. But the new generation of batteries, because they were more efficient and had evolved over time, that a battery that was twice as large, actually this should say the 120 amp hour battery, only weighed 2,965 pounds. So basically had twice the electric range and no need for a REX, and the weight penalty was only 60 pounds by 2018, 2019. There's some positives and negatives here with regards to charging and remote access to the vehicle. The original i3 was touted as having really good connectivity with cell phones that allow you to do remote monitoring of the charge of the vehicle, do preconditioning by heating or cooling the vehicle remotely. Also, they had free access or limited access to some of the charging networks that were available. The minuses were that the charging networks were limited. They weren't very widely spread. early on when the car was first introduced. Also, owners ran into problems with charging the car if they didn't have their own garage, such as if you had an apartment, and you couldn't easily charge the vehicle daily or every other day if that was the case. Another positive was BMW, compared to some other companies such as Tesla initially, had many service and dealerships throughout the country which could be used to do any type of servicing or service that the car required. The unfortunate part with that was that not all of the locations were proficient with doing maintenance and service on electric vehicles, or trained to do service on electric vehicles. The other problem was that BMW is notoriously known for having extremely high servicing costs, so any work that was done out of warranty can be extremely expensive. Another positive for the i3 is that right out of the gate they had a very good battery warranty on the high voltage battery of 8 years and 100,000 miles. And over time, it's turned out that very, very few of the battery packs have actually qualified for warranty repair, compared to some early first generation Leaf EVs that had severe battery degradation. That's not to say that range reduction is not an issue. Range reduction is an issue, especially with smaller battery packs where the duty cycle of the batteries, or how often they have to be charged and recharged, is quite a bit higher to get the same mileage than out of a vehicle that you would get with, let's say, a larger battery that would not need to go through so many charge cycles per mile. So this last slide, I just want to talk on the respect of BMW going back to making new electric vehicles based on their I division. Although they have discontinued the i3 and the i8, it looks like they're going back to producing large, more luxury-based, conventional-looking vehicles, metal-based vehicles on conventional high-volume manufacturing lines, likely to appeal to their base or classic BMW customer, since a lot of I think they received a lot of negative connotation with regards to the looks of the i brand when they first came out. Okay, that's it. Again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. It was a little bit long, but hopefully you found it interesting. If you do like content like this, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.